Good evening, good afternoon, wherever we are. Thank you so much for joining us today as we celebrate Priya's 40th year. We have had 20 conversations so far, and this is the 20th one. And the third of the gender conversations that we've had. The first was on gender training, second was on gender mainstreaming, and today our conversation is about gender in governance and the pathways for women's political leadership in governance. I would like to welcome everybody here who has joined us today on behalf of our partners, International IDEA, Kila, and Martha Farrell Foundation. Thank you so much for joining. Some house rules. If you have questions, if you have comments, please do put it in the Q&A section. Our colleagues Ridhima and Nitya and Prerna will be sharing them with the panelists. We have interpretation, 2 channels in Hindi and in Bangla. Our colleagues, Dr. Kaustav Bandopadhyay, Senior Director at Priya, will be supporting us for the Bangla channel. And we also have the Hindi to English channel. So do feel free to listen in, choose the channel, and we will repeat these instructions as we go along. At the bottom of the panel, you will see interpretation. You can click on that and you can choose the channel that we would like to, that you would like to listen in on. So I would like to now invite my colleague Prerna, who will give us a little context for the conversation that we are going to have today. So thank you, Prerna.
Thank you, Nandita. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Priya's 20th conversation. My name is Prerna, and I work with the Martha Farrell Foundation. To begin today's session, I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce Priya and our work. Priya at 40 has been an exciting journey. We have always considered ourselves as educators and facilitators, supporting individuals, organizations, and grassroots initiatives to learn, change, grow, and sustain themselves. Such support is not and has never been about financial support. It is support in the form of information sharing, in the form of ideas, in the form of linkage building, support through mediation expertise, and even emotional support. Priya's theory of change follows something unique, acting as a bridge between the supply and the demand sides of any issue or theme that we invest in. Efforts to mobilize individuals, especially the poor and the marginalized sections, but increasingly also the middle class, makes them aware of their rights and responsibilities, thus fueling their sense of agency to demand services, inclusion, participation, as well as knowledge. On the supply side, we work with government and private agencies to sensitize them to deliver their mandates and be accountable to citizens. We engage to put in place answers which are long-lasting and effective rather than an artificial short-term fix. We work with and not for. We can, of course, only present a slice of the work that we have done over the last 40 years. Priya, and its name, Participatory Research in Asia, owes its birth to the International Participatory Research Network as the main node to expand the nascent field of participatory research in the Asian subcontinent. The guiding principle for this period of Priya's history was promoting the right to learn, that is, making the process of learning available to everybody, irrespective of societal division. By the 1990s, Priya had established its Training for Trainers course to impart the participatory learning methodologies to grassroots activists, government trainers, and development professionals from different fields. The participatory training methodology included a specific focus on an experiential understanding of gender in everyday life. The right to information for accountability and monitoring and demanding public services became essential. Priya's collaborative approach embraced not only institutions of governance, but other stakeholders as well. In 2004, Priya, for the first time, spoke of people's participation in urban townships, voicing the relevance of participatory planning in urban centers as much as in rural areas. The new millennium also saw Priya sharpen its focus on gender. Beyond numbers, the results of our work as a knowledge institution and its impacts can be found in removing obstacles, which are both personal as well as systemic in nature, valuing knowledge, a diversity of knowledge cultures in all forms, languages, as well as expressions, amplifying voice, the dreams, hopes, frustrations, pains of the hitherto excluded, authentic, contextual, locally rooted voice based on experience and knowledge. Making democracy for all. The learning of values and principles of democracy in everyday life develops, and promoting its practice in rituals prepares active citizens and makes institutions transparent and accountable to citizens. This supports the functioning of a vibrant democracy in India as well as elsewhere. Throughout our 4 decades of work, we have engaged closely with the issue of gender, both institutionally as well as programmatically. I now invite Nandita to share in more detail. Over to you, Nandita.
Thank you so much, Prerna. मैं एक और बार ये interpretation की मैं बता रही हूँ. I'm going to repeat the interpretation once more. किसी को English to Hindi translation चाहिए होगा तो नीचे एक बार में वहाँ पे interpretation है. आपको वहाँ पे click करेंगे. Am I right, Prerna? आप वहाँ पे क्लिक करेंगे तो आप चूज कर सकते हैं कि would you like to go for the Hindi translation or the Bangla translation. So anybody would like a translation would just click on interpretation and go into that channel. Is that I hope we are joining the respective channels. Thank you so much, Prerna. Priya's work on women's political empowerment and leadership and governance has largely been around knowledge generation, influencing policies, capacity building of women elected representatives, as well as very interestingly, we've also done gender audits of panchayats. So all of these reports will be shared in the comment section by my colleague Ridhima. But very early on, when women started, when there was reservation and women started joining, local self-governance bodies, we were very curious to understand what is happening with the women. Are they able to participate? Is it, are they able to, fulfill the roles and responsibilities that are expected of them? So several studies were conducted by us, by Priya, along with our partner organizations in several states. And some of the things that we discovered was, women elected representatives, they lack the knowledge and skills and capacities to govern. So governance itself was a very new concept. So there was reservation, women were there, but what were they supposed to do? वो महिला चुन के आएगी, फिर वो क्या करेगी वहाँ पे? So there was this sense of what do we do? And of course, then when there was a sense of what do we do, then family members stepped in to say, yes, we are there to support you. And that's when women started taking a step back to say, all right, you take the lead. So we saw a lot of that happening in the various studies that we conducted. Affirmative action was there, but it did not really translate into transforming the lives of the women elected representatives. So what was really happening and what could be done to better the situation, improve the situation? The women were not able to play their roles effectively. Women had, but we also saw that in some places that women had developed some sense of empowerment in some areas, and they were, trying to do work on issues that are close to, which comes with experiences of women, when it comes to, female feticide, when it comes to water. But then they received a lot of backlash. We also saw in all the work that we were doing, the backlash was immense when it came to women wanting to hold power and exercise their power. And that backlash not only from family, but from community, from the system, the patronizing attitude existed. Some of the challenges that some of the studies also brought out was some of the questions that we will be deliberating on today. Those questions still remain. 33% reservation that Ranjana ji has led the campaign. So enthusiastic, but that 33% reservation, is it a glass ceiling or is there an outer limit? How do we achieve gender equality when it comes to allocation of funds? And should the performances of women elected representatives effectiveness be evaluated on the basis of standards that are set by men? Who is setting those standards? And most importantly, the question in 2005, some of the things that came about was the violence that women elected representatives were experiencing by colleagues and by communities. Some of the backlash was around that. And so when the Vishakha guidelines were passed in 1997, the questions that we raised then, and the questions still remain unanswered, still is what of those women elected representatives? Which committee and where are those committees going to be set up? Today, we celebrate 8 years of the passing of the 2013 Act in India of the prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace. And these questions still remain relevant to us. Safety of women. What is really hindering, women's participation? If you can see, Martha Farrell Foundation went ahead along with RSCD, did a lot of work on creating safe panchayats for women and girls, and safety audits were conducted in large scales in those districts in Maharashtra. So today's conversation really is to understand what is really hampering, and impeding and preventing women who are doing very well in the local governance. But are they there when we look at, if you look at the data of IPU statistics, it says that the global average of women in parliament is now 25.58%. Is that enough? So obviously the women there is no mobility, there is no movement. What is hampering this movement? Is there a movement or not? What is it? Is it backlash? Is it societal backlash? Is it violence? What can we do to further the action? What needs to be done to broaden and increase women's ability to move from local to provincial to national levels? We have Rituji here who has moved. So we would love to hear from her later on when she comes in. But today's conversation is basically to answer these three questions. We have a wonderful panel of speakers here who are practitioners, also have led movements, have trailblazers in the work that they're doing. We would love to hear from them and their experiences. I would now like to invite Lena. Lena's bio is going to be shared by our colleague in the chat. So Lena is the regional director for International IDEA, and International IDEA is also a partner for us today. So welcome, Lena. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nandita, and indeed greetings from Australia, where the night is falling. And happy 40th anniversary to Priya, with many happy returns. And thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this conversation. Our discussion started with Dr. Bandran's wondering about this very question of why is it that strong representation of women at Indian local governments has not increased representation of women at the state, let alone national level. And I've been trying to get my head around this question and would like to put forward a couple of suggestions why this may be the case, perhaps slightly provocative as well, and really look forward to your feedback. And then in the second part of my talk, I will focus on what has worked, which approaches have proven effective in supporting independent and strong leadership of women in governance institutions. Just a quick background so you know where I'm coming from. I'm originally from Finland, outside for the last 20 years, Australia, and spent a lot of time in the Pacific, the longest stretch in Nepal for 8 years. My point is that when investigating the countries around the world where there is a gender quota at the local level, it seems that by and large, local quotas do not translate into increased or significant representation at other levels. At least not in Asia Pacific, and I think it applies to much of the other regions too. So being involved in politics is rarely a pathway to politics for women. And perhaps that's always been over-ambitious or unreasonable expectation. As we know, in many countries, governments has given a second wind to democracy, India case in point. And there are numerous studies published about the positive impact that women's participation has brought about when we investigate that impact over time. It doesn't happen overnight or over 1 or 2 election cycles. But the critical point is that the very purpose of the local gender quotas was to bring about women in politics at the local level, nothing more, nothing less. And the reasons that prevented from women entering politics at the national level remain. We know now that women's availability or interest in politics was never the issue. There are women, there is interest, and there is capacity, yet the very same obstacles remain. Maybe one concrete example outside of India, which is Vanuatu, which is a country in the Pacific and has quotas at the local level and 0 women representative in the national parliament. And in Vanuatu, the very purpose of introducing the local quotas was to experiment. How would it work? What would happen? Would there be any undesired consequences? And it felt safe to start at the local level. Now it has been proven that sky did not fall, no terrible things happened, on the contrary. And the purpose was to introduce the system of gender quotas rather than individuals to national positions. So the logical conclusion would have been that quotas are applied in other levels too, but they are not. Secondly, and I haven't studied this systematically, but it would be interesting to understand if such a pathway from local to national work any better for men. On the basis of the countries that I looked at, the answer is rarely. There are individuals, but local politics doesn't seem to be the pathway. More so at times from state level, where such levels exist, to national level politics. So perhaps indeed, particularly in 21st century, becoming a political leader or representative doesn't work that way. And local level representatives may well be interested in affairs and well-being of their own areas. That is certainly the case here in Australia. Federal politics is not attractive from local council point of view. So in sum, perhaps the very expectation of local gender quotas working as pathways to national politics was never realistic or even possible. The obstacles that were always there remain, but that doesn't take away the importance of gender quotas at the local level. And I know there are stories that prove otherwise, and I'm very keen to learn more about those journeys from amongst the panelists. And in terms of exceptions, Scandinavian countries are amongst those few where there are no quotas, but almost parity at local and national level politics. And I have an emphasis on almost, and the reasons are many. Number one being, of course, the overall Gender Equality Index, measuring equality in private sector, executive positions, schooling levels, income levels, and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that politics is not an isolated part of society. More there is societal democracy, more likely there is to be gender equality in politics. And so here I'm coming to my second point. Quotas or not, we need strong and capable leaders at all levels. So which approaches and methods have been effective? Here my example is from Nepal that I know quite well, where the constitution promulgated in 2015 introduced a federal, inclusive, secular republic. Elections for the local level took place after 20 years or so hiatus in 2017, alongside with first ever province and federal level elections. How the quotas came about is a very long story. Suffice to say that achieving the final formulation of the constitutional and electoral law text regarding the gender quotas at all levels was a result of persistent political pressure against emerging backlash. And the 2017 elections brought about a huge number of women into local governments, majority of them taking on such political positions for the very first time. And in terms of skills development, building up confidence, what has worked as per our assessment, and by that of many other organizations working in this field is, number one, the mentoring approach, and number two, peer support. Mentoring approach means that the supporters are not coming in as experts or delivering PowerPoint presentations, requiring women to attend training, taking time away from their political work or their household work. And mentors are there shadowing women's everyday work, advising when needed, often meeting women in their own houses, speaking in languages that women well understand. And of course, they need to be well prepared and train themselves, but as per Nepal experience, they do not need to be seasoned experts. They're often young graduates working with right attitude. And secondly, the peer support between the local level women leaders of the same district, province, or even further away, women leaders have proven very effective. They have each other's WhatsApp numbers and mobile numbers and can compare notes and seek advice or simply at times to vent frustrations. And the early impacts are there as well, even if modest, meaning that representatives carefully check, correct the meeting minutes before signing them off, start to take front seats at meetings, and so on and so on. It will be only after next elections in 2022, we will know if there is mobility from local to province or national level politics. But as I've argued, perhaps that's not the point. And Nepal has the gender quotas at national level too, and has 33% of women representation in the federal parliament. So what works, simply put, is gender quotas, coupled with overall democratization and transformation of society. And that can be supported by approaches such as mentoring, facilitating peer support, networking, caucusing, and so on. At IDEA, we're also studying how moving online may change electoral campaigning. And we are yet to understand the impact of online campaigning for women, whether that will help or hinder the electability. The 2020 local council elections in Victoria, Australia, suggest that online campaigning forced on by the pandemic favored women and younger people. Campaigning was cheap, and younger people are well versed with these platforms. Particularly Instagram seemed to work well with young women. As we know, social media is a double-edged sword. And IDEA is also about to launch a report how the Facebook is treating women politicians in Fiji. And while Facebook gives a lot of visibility, it can be a terribly vicious platform as well. And one final thought, increasing number of countries that have adopted policies where gender parity to equal or proportionate representation of men and women is a fundamental principle, or at least a goal, is increasing. Examples, of such countries include Bolivia, France, Mexico, and others. And unlike gender quotas, gender parity is not regarded as a temporary special measure, but instead as a permanent necessity of democratic government. If we think it this way, then gender equality and related quotas should be considered as democratic mechanism like adult suffrage, and hence permanently entrenched in democratic constitutions. I leave it at there and look forward to what other panelists have to say and to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. Thank you so much. Very relevant points, because that's also something that came up in the studies that we did to say, how are trainings and how are these sessions designed for women? 3 days residential intensive training. You forget they have so many multiple roles that they're already playing. How are we creating that enabling environment for women to really do what they're supposed to do and they want to do? And I love the point that you made is, it's not that there is no intention or the capacity, but that's not the issue. But they're still not there. Why? And I like the point that you brought out about online campaigning, and I saw Namdol nodding. I think she'll be talking about that in a while, because we saw that recently in the elections that happened right now in the Tibetan government as well. Thank you, Lina. Thank you so much. I'd like to now invite Dr. Anjana Kumari. She is the director of the Center for Social Research and has several years of experience on governance and women's leadership. Over to you, Dr. Anjana.
To listen to Lina, I muted myself. So thank you, Lina, for putting things in perspective to make it very easy for me. Also, let me join you in congratulating Priya for having completed 40 years and also playing a very crucial, very important role in building the civil society of India. So congratulations, Rajeshji, on this occasion. I just want to bring this whole idea in a background which is now showing up, because since I have been quite involved in this movement, you rightly said, and also not only as a practitioner, someone who's shouting on the street and going to jail every time for asking for more women in parliament, but also written extensively about it, analyze parliament's proceedings. We try to look at the kind of level of performance women are doing, look at it, Panchayati Raj, and trying to dispel this whole myth about Pati Pradhan, that women have become leaders in their own rights, and also working with lots of organizations across the country, including Bhim Raskarji's organization. I can see that a lot of us came together to really join in asking for space for more women in politics and in parliament. Now, look at the way India is moving at the moment. In the recent times, women voters have emerged as potent electoral force. And also they have, turnout of women voters is rising exponentially. When I'm saying that in the period between 1952 to 2019, the voter growth rate for women shot up exponentially by nearly 20%. And also in 2019 election, first time, women have voted more than men. So women have only one way to express themselves in democracy is through vote, especially in the context of Indian democracy. And here women have excelled the most recent election in terms of voting. This massive turnout of women is evident of a heightened voice of women as voters. It is not an interior, it is not an initiate, rather an outcome of a long and strenuous efforts by women actively engaged in political society of India. In contrast, while women voters turnout has grown tremendously, the women's representation in lawmaking bodies, both at state and national levels, has been strikingly poor, and we all know it. In India, in fact, the other major impetus other than women coming out as voters has been the 73rd and 74th Amendment of the Constitution, where women have been elected. Now it is 50% across the state. And that's the question actually you are raising through this webinar, that why it is that women have been elected, given 50% space in local politics, but they don't emerge in the national politics. Okay, in a very politics which is really caught in a prism of a very democracy which is really starting from very elitist to now becoming a common, after 60s and 70s we started seeing lot people from coming from marginal communities and caste entered the political mainstream, and they started becoming important and their voices becoming important. For example, from upper caste control over politics to OBC politics to Dalit politics. There has been a huge amount of turnaround in Indian politics. And that's what we see in terms of, that's why even men coming from the Panchayati Raj level to national level, you will see rarest of the rare cases where you will see that the men who are on the local level are really becoming national level leaders. It's very difficult because I'll tell you the logic of becoming a national level leaders, and that's where women also have not been. But of course, this has really mobilized women in the grassroots, and that is the reason you see that their turnout has increased, and there's a political ambition that we see among the Indian women at the local level. They don't want to remain there, but then they have to find a way to go up. However, the mobility of high-performing women leaders to higher tiers has been limited, but quite important. Many women leaders who have headed the political parties, who become the chief ministers. That's another positive thing that's happening, that we do have there was Indira Gandhi at one point of time. Today we have, Mayawati, we have Mamata Banerjee, a whole galaxy of women leaders who become very important and very strong in our system. And that's something which is also kind of positive indicator that, things are going to change. It is due to deep-rooted, we all know, deep-rooted socio-political norms that there is limited representation of women in everywhere, globally in all governance systems. In Beijing, I remember we were counting 10% and now we are saying 28%. We are very happy about that, but I thought by Beijing till now, we should have been in, at least in developed nations, 50-50, at least. I was looking at German cabinet and 50% women are the ministers there. And that's a big, huge news at the moment. So it is imperative to note here that 9 out of 10 candidates in Lok Sabha elections have been men. Till date, 9 out of 10. So how do we expect women's numbers to increase? Also, while democracies around the world are making some progress, Indian democracy has somehow not worked towards creating any space in spite of our almost 28 years of consistent struggle on getting more women in parliament. So to answer your question, when I look at the parliament, let's say 3 phases of election, fine. The first phase, if we want to count from 77 to 2002, 52 to 1977, 1952, the first election happened. We had only 5% women in India's parliament, only 5% till 77. And then when we come to 2000, till 2002, from 77, we had only 7% women in India's parliament, and also from the third phase, which is 2002 onwards. So we are almost 2002 onwards, just 10%, a little over. At the moment, we are 14.4% in the parliament. So you can say that it has taken almost 75 years. We are celebrating 75th year. First parliament had only 3% women. And today we are 14.4% women. So it is really something else, which I would call it that essentially the lack of representation I consider at the national and state level is active fencing of politics from women. Women have been actively kept out of the politics by political parties, by men who control the parties, because instrument of democratic political power are the political parties through which you then enter the power arena. But parties are totally controlled by men. They use very heavily, and they're heavily patriarchal. Not only that they use, but the political parties in India are tools of patriarchy, one of the tools of patriarchy. So that's what fence women out of the entering the political space. Or also it is by and large seen that the women candidates, despite having a better winning rate, shown through many researches, that women have a higher winnability and women can have won better. In spite of that, men, they refuse party tickets. And that's why this happened. This is a serious consequence of discrimination against women in politics and is a cause of concern in the world's largest democracy like India. Okay, on the face of it, 73rd and 74th Amendment, to answer your question, why women have not moved from the local to the national, because 50% are there in the local. So on the face of it, the amendments have ensured entry of women in politics and subsequent empowerment in the policy and decision-making process. But the underhanded ways of male politicians are cutting across the system, resulting in menace of proxy representation and dummy candidates. Still, in spite of the fact that we have fought, we have trained, we have gone village to village, you all have gone, we have so many institutions in India have done that, but still, it's very, very difficult for women to emerge on their own. Additionally, even if the reservation is put in place, the MPs and MLAs subordinate figures. And I always joke with my friends who are ministers today in parliament or who have been, as you know, being someone who's been close to all these women, or some women we have mentored to be where they are at the moment. It's very important. There is an ornamental presence, really. I mean, look at the way women are being given important positions like finance in India, or like women and child, like, so many important positions. But when you look at the way they are pushed around and, put one ministry, or their voices have not been heard, we know this. And then we know that, in fact, they remain a subordinate figure in the political parties. Rubber stamps and de jure leaders as the men in their party dictate terms. So that's the other factor I think is very important. On the other hand, even for the women who have come to ace positions of decision making, there is a lack of political astuteness, awareness, gender perspective, rules and regulations, knowledge, exposure. I know that when we go to women to train I won't call the train, but have dialogue with the new elected members of parliament, it's very difficult, because for them to know so much in one go is very difficult. To learn what they must do in 0 hour, what kind of questions, what are the star questions, how should they, propose a private member bill, so many things. So I think there is need for that kind of a thing, which we need to build. And we did run a program with IIM Bangalore, where we were training women into, this program was called Women in Leadership. And we train women into how to really manage and how to master all these knowledge and information to become effective leaders. This combined effect of lack of resources and unfavorable conditions, coupled with indifferent attitudes of officials and patriarchy of administrative machinery, poses challenge to women in administrative roles and in politics and leadership roles. So that's what I see why women have not really come up in terms of. Now, to go to which approaches and models and methods have been effective in supporting. Now, what happened in many countries which were the post struggle, internal arms conflict, or for example, South Africa, struggle for democracy and freedom, Nepal, where they came out of the, the whole monarchy to democracy. There was already the role of women in the struggle was recognized, and when the constitution was drafted, already women could exercise the pressure to get 33% included in the constitution. So the quota was not really fought for, but was really part of the constitution making, and that recognition of women's contribution in the struggle was there. The other route has been quota. 50, for example, Sweden, I will say, I mean, of course, Lina would know more, but whatever we have studied and quoted, that, 40, 40 and 20, that's a kind of system that evolved. Or Germany, listing system. So that's the other route that was there. And third, that was our route, and that's very indigenous and very Indian. And that's why when the parliamentary committee went around the country, we in fact helped in drafting the bill which was proposed in the parliament. I was part of the drafting, civil society support of drafting that bill. I think we did ensure that women get 33% seat reserve, and they should come through the direct election, a democratic process. We are not saying pick and choose women. This is no quota where you're picking and choosing women according to your choice. What you're doing is just saying, okay, let's give them a level playing field. That is it. A woman will contest a woman. She can mobilize money, muscle, mafia, mala, and Mike as much against each other as men, we always say. So she will be able to fight this election on a level playing field. She doesn't have to have more money than, men can mobilize a lot of more money than women can mobilize. And still, even till today, we starve of resources, even in our organizational setup. So anyway, so that's what was the most important part of our whole strategy to get 33%. And now we are saying nothing less than 50%, because in any case, but you can see the considered silence of the people in power to not give this, not even discuss it. 2019 manifesto shouted at of all the political parties, shouted at the top of their voice that two things they will do. One, give safety to women, because after Nirbhaya, they were coming back, and everybody, globally was worried what's going on in this country, so much of rape, so much of violence. And so how will they be? So safety of women as well as representation to women. But when you see till date, the very, very considered silence across the political parties, nobody raises the issue, nobody wants to discuss this issue in parliament. So then we see that this is a struggle which is going to be a long haul, and we will be, the method is to really connect with women. So I would say, let me just to make it much shorter. I think after 50% reservation in the local bodies, we know that women perform very well. People go back to women because 33% was given, and women got elected on their own merit, 49%. So I think women's leadership, people trust, women have been able to deliver. So that route is important. And that is why the only way I see is revival of women's reservation bill. Because 2010, it was passed in Rajya Sabha. And sorry for the international audience, I'm talking so much about just India and Indian struggle, but it is our struggle for a long time. So the only way I see 2019, the current government party.
Our timekeeper is.
Yes, sorry, I can see. Nitya, I am a public speaker. Please just bear with me one more minute. So, in addition, a promotion of, I think a promotion of female lawmakers in local bodies on a state level is needed. So, states can pass this bill. There's not necessarily we should wait for the national parliament to do it, but certainly we should keep reminding. And if we can join the forces across civil society movement, women's movement, global institutions which are working for getting more women in policy making, I think that's the strategy we have to move in and put in our collective pressure and strength to get more women. There is no shortcut to it. We will get there, but of course it's taking time.
Thank you, Ranjanaji.
Thank you.
We'll come back to you and, Leena, for your comments once we hear others speak.
Nandita, as you know, I've been in meetings since morning, and I did share with you the other meeting. So please excuse me. I will come back and we will have big discussion. Right. I'll stay for some time and then quietly sneak out. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Ranjanaji talked about muscle, money, mafia, Mike and Mala. And women also have that. Women have become leaders, but are we recognizing their leadership? It's about space and voice. And I would now like to introduce our next panelist, Dr. Amrut Raj, who's from Kila. Dr. Amrut Raj is a specialist in women's studies at the Kerala Institute of Local Administration. Kila is also a partner to organize this important conversation today. Welcome, Dr. Amrut Raj. Taking forward what Dr. Ranjana was saying, we have, but Kerala, gender mainstreaming a priority issue. Why have we not seen a woman chief minister in Kerala? Apart from the question that you have, something that you can also discuss. So over to you, Dr. Amrut Raj. And Nitya you can just keep checking the comment section. She'll be reminding us of time. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of Kila, I thank Priya, Idea International, and Maratha Farrell Foundation for associating with us. And I congratulate Priya on its 40th anniversary. And I also pay my humble homage to Maratha Farrell. She continues to be an inspiring for all of us who work for gender equality and local governance. Okay, so coming to the question, yes, I come from Kerala. We are from Kerala, the southernmost part of India, and which has when we discuss about India, we have a different kind of indexes. We say that our demography, sex ratio, there are more women compared to men in Kerala. As voters in electoral roll also, there are more women compared to men, and there are infant mortality rate is low, maternal mortality rate is low, longevity for women is also more, and in higher education there are more women. But actually we are proud of these achievements, but these are there are paradoxes, and there is nothing to romanticize the empowerment of women as such. As all of us you were discussing, of course, we are having 50%, more than 50% women in our local government system. And of course, obviously, the answer is because of our quota system. But still in Kerala, as you are mentioning, we don't have a chief minister, women as a chief minister. And more than that, we don't, still now we don't have at least 10% of women in our legislative assembly. Of course, we are having 11 MLAs as women in Kerala's legislative assembly currently, but it is the second time we just crossed a two-digit number. In 1996, it was 13, and now we have 11. But the welcoming thing is just now we are having 3 ministers, women ministers. Maybe for the first time, we are having 3 women ministers in our assembly. And other interesting part is among the 11 MLAs, 9 of them had local government background. And among two of them who are the ministers, one was a vice president of district panchayat, and the other higher education minister, Professor Bindu, was a municipal chairperson before. So, but that does not show the story as a set. Still, we are not able to cross 10%, and we have 20 member of parliaments, and we have just 1 woman as an MP from Kerala, representing Kerala. And again, incidentally, she too was a block panchayat president before she elected as an MP. So we are happy being in Kerala at Kerala Institute of Local Administration. We are happy. Our people who are trained are becoming MLAs and a member of parliament, but the number is very, very low. And the most important answer, and as all of us know, as in parts of the world, we too have a patriarchal system. When we think about the number of assets or the resource women are having are very, very less. And freedom of mobility, after 7 o'clock, you can't find any woman in Kerala streets. And again, when it comes to any other parts of decision-making part of the government system, be it formal government system like MLAs or MPs, or be it in political parties, for both, or trade unions or local or any other professional organizations, the number of women are very, very less. And the answer is there are many patriarchal kind of mindsets. There are religious things. There are other social institutions which are barring women or very scientific or very collectively keeping away women from the structures of power. I think I'll go to let others speak. I think I'll go for the next round. It's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Amdar. Thank you so much for that. I would also, I love the fact that you said there are paradoxes remain. What are those paradoxes and how do we decipher those paradoxes? So we will hear now from Indonesia. Andy Timo has joined us all the way from Indonesia. She's a member of the Constitutional Study Commission, People's Consultative Assembly of the Republic of Indonesia. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nandita. Hi, everybody. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear.
Thank you. Thank you for Priya and congratulations on anniversary. Martha Farrell Foundation, International Media, Kayla, for inviting me to this. Today, I would like to share about my journey in politics. And I use my presentation, share screen, okay. Me and my political journey. At first, I would like to show you a little bit about my profile. As you can see in the slide, my name is Andi Timo Pangerang. I came from South Sulawesi, one of the provinces in Indonesia. And before I entered politics, I worked in the banking sector. And currently, I'm still active in the Democratic Party as the Deputy Secretary General in Internal Affairs. I'd like to begin my story by explaining to you in short about what happened in 1998 that changed political environment in Indonesia. In May 1998, President Suharto stepped down from office. This event marked the beginning of a new era in Indonesia's history after being ruled by the authoritarian New Order regime for more than 3 decades. Indonesia began a new phase known as Reformation. After several important reform actions are including freedom of the people to express their aspiration, huge opportunity to the establishment of a new political party, and decentralization of power to the regions. Affirmative action for women in politics started with the passing of Law Number 12 of 2003 regarding the general election. The law stated that political party should have at least 30% women representation in nominating candidates for legislative member. And from time to time, affirmative action for women in the political field has increasingly been refined. This can be seen from Law Number 2 of 2008 regarding political party. The law requires political parties to include at least 30% women representation in their establishment and management at the national level. For example, Law Number 10 of 2008 regarding general election stipulates that the list of prospective legislative candidates must accommodate at least 30% representation of women at all levels. And a more advanced provision in affirmative action was the implementation of the zipper system that stipulates that for every 3 prospective candidates, there will be at least 1 female candidate. My journey to Parliament. In 2002, I started my journey in politics by joining a newly established party called the National Democratic Unity Party. And in 2003, being a candidate for the provincial legislative, I began campaigning activities in 3 districts in South Sulawesi province, namely Bone, Sopeng, and Wajo. During the time, I got to face new challenges and experiences, such as traveling to rural and remote areas with insufficient infrastructure, and sometimes I even had to cross rivers to access the areas. And additionally, I also faced strong patriarchal culture. However, it didn't bring down my spirit. Looking at the reality in those areas, there were still many people who lived in poverty, and there were lack of health facilities and inadequate infrastructure. This made me want to fight and do my best to get a seat in the parliament so that I would be able to make a change, to be able to help make the people's lives better. And in 2004, I was elected as a member of the People Representative Council of South Sulawesi Province for the period of 2004 and 2009. In Parliament 2004-2009, in province level, as a member of the Council, we have three functions. The legislative functions, which makes regional regulation, and the supervision function to supervise and monitor development, and the budgeting function to approve regional revenue and expenditure budget. And as a newcomer, I learned to adapt to the three functions and became familiar with the relationship between the government and parliament. Along the way, I began to fight for a better life for the people of South Sulawesi, especially in my constituency, through the passing of policy that supported increased budget for development of infrastructures, especially in rural areas. Also policies that facilitated in providing reachable health care and sanitation facilities in those areas. In addition, the Council also play a role in making regulation such about prevention of domestic violence and many more. Move forward. As the next election came and there were more opportunities for women in politics, I decided to go to the national level due to some consideration, such as first, I understood that there were still unequal development where infrastructure and health facilities were different from one province to another. Therefore, I need to fight for the development budget and programs for the South Sulawesi area. Also by then, I already gained experience as a legislator in provincial level. This is important in my future path because by having this experience, by starting from the regional level of People's Council, I was able to understand how to carry out the three functions of Parliament, and I gained so much knowledge and insight about what people in South Sulawesi needed, so that I would be able to represent them properly on the national level. I would also represent more districts in the national level, from 3 to 9 districts for national level. Thereby, I would be able to help more people. And becoming a representative in the national level also means that I would be closer to decision makers and I could contribute more to regulatory policies on national level. And I also got my family's support, which was very important to me. However, to qualify for the national level, a larger party was needed to the parliamentary threshold requirement. Therefore, I changed party and joined the Democratic Party. This party provided room for women to move forward together. After the election, I managed to qualify as a member of the People's Representative Council of the Republic of Indonesia on national level for the period of 2009-2014. As I have stated earlier, my experience as a member of the provincial parliament became extremely useful at national level. Together with the government, the National People's Representative Council worked by optimizing the legislative function in reducing poverty rates, reducing maternal mortality rates, reducing infant and child mortality rates, and providing more access to clean water sources, providing more basic sanitation facilities, and ensuring equal infrastructure and development for South Sulawesi, and many more. All in all, I believe that women should be able to utilize their strength to grasp any opportunity come their way. I believe always trust the process. Small steps in the right direction will take us there. And big journeys begin with small steps. My experience in the provincial level has sharpened my knowledge, my ability, and intuition to become an outstanding in the national level. No matter how good the regulation for women is, it will be meaningless if women are still unmindful and apathetic in politics. Politics is all about how persevering and tenacious you are. So let's dream big, work hard, and never give up. Many thanks. Thank you, Nandita.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andy, for sharing your story with us. We will come back to you with some questions and reflections after we hear from others. Thank you so much. I would like to now call our next speaker for this evening, Namdol. We call her lovingly, we call her Namdol. Namgyal Dolkar Yagari is the member of parliament, the Central Tibetan Administration and Standing Committee member for Tibetan Parliament in Exile. This time, Namdol, we saw record number of young women contesting for elections, and along with you. So what are some of the challenges that you have faced for providing political leadership, and how have you been able to address some of those challenges? And also, if you can touch upon some of the challenges that were there, you being young women who are all standing for elections, what happened during that time? So while you also share some of these challenges and how you overcome and how you support other young women. So over to you, Namdol. Thanks.
Thank you, Nandita, and congratulations to Priya. Congratulations to you, Dr. Rajesh Tandonji, and it's actually a privilege for me to be sharing the panel with all of you, and I look forward to hearing more of your experiences, and it was amazing listening to the prior speakers. So, as introduced, my name is Namgyal Dolkar. I'll just stick with Namgyal for now. I've been elected the second time in the Tibetan Parliament in Exile. Perhaps if I can introduce our Central Tibetan Administration, that is the Tibetan government in exile, after Tibet was occupied by China. After His Holiness the Dalai Lama, thousands of Tibetans have come in India, and we have found our refuge. And we, along with His Holiness, have been called as honorary guest of India, and we have ensured that we use this freedom as a privilege to encompass not just our lives, but especially of Tibetans inside Tibet. And like myself, there are thousands of Tibetan youth born in exile, studying about democracy, essence of democracy, and how we can foresee a future Tibet of a future Tibet as a democratic, free, equal, nation. And this is what we are doing in exile in India, where we are practicing our democracy. We are learning so much from India as well. We are learning and unlearning from India, if I can just correct that, and from democracies around the world, where how we can sharpen ourselves in exile and future when we do get our freedom. So these are things that we are learning, and it's a very, I think, a different and unique experience for us, where we are not just representing ourselves, calling for freedom of Tibetans, the entire Tibetan population inside Tibet, but also ensuring that our voices in exile is heard, not just as a Tibetan youth, but as a Tibetan woman. So there are so many voices that we are trying to carry and share, and using the platforms that we have tried everything we can, and we are trying to ensure that we not only keep ourselves strong, our identity strong as Tibetans, but also make sure that we are able to pick in and learn from perhaps the positive things from the nations around of how we can go with time, but making sure that our identity as Tibetans remains intact. And while we are doing that, we are faced with so many challenges. And if I may just say that, Tibetans in exile, we have been blessed with the fact that, His Holiness, when he came to exile, he came with a vision of democracy, of ensuring that the Tibetans are able to experience democracy. And hence, it has been an entire step where it began by, by electing the representatives of member of parliament, and slowly and gradually, how different voices within our community, whether it comes to gender, whether it comes to region, or our religion, all these different voices are given representation within the Tibetan parliament. And it was enabled through reservation, actually, and that really helped how different voices becomes part of the decision making, and ensuring that the voices from the people are heard on the platform of Tibetan Parliament. So in exile, there was a redrafting of our charter. We call our constitution charter, which ensured that these protections, these reservations are guaranteed to ensure different voices are heard. So I think it's important for all of us to realize that, representing the interests of citizens of all walks of life is not just crucial, but it enables a stronger and a much more robust democracy that is needed. And I think for me, as an individual, I've always introduced myself as a Tibetan freedom fighter, a Tibetan activist. And for me, my identity as a woman within the platform, within the area of freedom movement is important, because I think perhaps it's been shaped because of my background, of how my late father, my mother, they've all been former political prisoners who have been jailed for years. Like my late father, jailed for more than 20 years in Chinese prison, have been subjected to torture of different forms. And so I think that kind of shaped me as a person into becoming the activist that I am. But also the experiences of my grandmother, of not just being a political prisoner, but a female political prisoner, like of being a female refugee, and how, practicing democracy as a woman. I think these are experiences of everyday Tibetan women that we are trying to bring our voices heard. And I think despite the reservation, it's very interesting how from different regions, traditional regions of Tibet, that's 3 traditional regions, Yuzhang, Amto, and Kham, we are supposed to have 2 reserved seat for Tibetan women. And so far this year, we were able to ensure the victory of 9 Tibetan member of parliament. I mean, that is not a very impressive number for us, but considering the numbers that I've been hearing around India and other nations, we believe that we are doing pretty good. But then I believe that we should be doing better, considering the fact that we still say that our population is 50-50. That leads us to, think of why, having a voter, 50% of voter of women, we are not able to ensure victory of 50% or more, perhaps, of women leaders. So I think these are challenges that we need to, and with help of so many experts like Nandita, who are making sure that Tibetans within our community, not just the leader, but from civil community, are guided with the right sort of message in ensuring that, perhaps now as Tibetan women, we can learn to trust Tibetan women leadership and their strong role and their personality and their, vision as a leader. And I think these are things, if I can share with you how this year, it's sadly enough, the president of, I shouldn't be saying sadly, the president of Central Tibet Administration, that is the exile government, is a male, of course. We haven't had a female political leader so far, especially after His Holiness the Dalai Lama handed over the entire political authority. And for me, as a women voter, we hope to see women leadership coming soon in our exile democracy, and very soon when Tibet is free. And as of now, or when it comes to the executive body, there are 7 cabinets, and of those 7 cabinets, as of now, 3 of them are Tibetan women leaders. And I must say that it makes me very proud to endorse them. It makes me very proud because they, I hear about token votes, token seats, and I know how these 3 ladies are such a personality where they will be able to contribute very strongly. I'm sorry, is my time up already? I'm so sorry about that. So all I want to say is perhaps I should be able to take questions. There will be questions for me through which I'll be able to share more of my experiences and of our exile community. I just want to say that, as women leaders, I think the power that we have is empathy and sensitivity. And that is a power, because that is many often looked upon as, something negative, something weak. And for me, I've always said that, because of these facts, we can be better leader. And I can say with experience that, perhaps we have been doing much better, but we deserve more than what we have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Namdo. Thank you so much for that. Very reflective and emotional, and thank you so much for sharing that. And very, very interesting point that you raised. Women need to learn to trust women's leadership. And I think that is shared across, not only in your experience, but we're so used to seeing leadership in a particular way, in a particular type. We talked about empathy and sensitivity. And so, when talking to women elected representatives that work with RSCD, one thing that they talk about is, what is the difference? What is the difference between a male elected representative and a woman? She comes with all of these experiences, and that's how she changes how the world looks and is. So thank you so much, Namdol, for that. I want to now introduce Rituji. Rituji is a former Mukhia of the Gram Panchayat Singh Bahini from Bihar. ऋतु आपका थोड़ा सा एक्सपीरियंस आप बता देंगे कि जब आप मुखिया थी क्या था, व्हाट वर द चैलेंजेस एंड क्या लेसन्स है, वे फॉरवर्ड क्या हो सकता है महिलाओं के लिए? अनम्यूट करना पड़ेगा थोड़ा सा.
ओके, थैंक्स नंदिता फॉर इनवाइटिंग मी. सबसे पहले तो मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि जो हमारा टॉपिक है तो उसके बारे में हम बात करते हैं और फिर हम अपने एक्सपीरियंसेस पे आएंगे. तो मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि रिप्रेजेंटेशन जो है वो रिजर्वेशन के द्वारा अगर मिल भी जाता है तो हमारा पार्टिसिपेशन कितना है वो इम्पोर्टेंट है। हम लोग क्या कहते हैं कि हमें रिजर्वेशन चाहिए, जैसे कि हमने पंचायती राज में बिहार में 50% रिजर्वेशन दिए हैं। पंचायती राज में 50% रिजर्वेशन के बावजूद भी क्या महिलाओं का रिप्रेजेंटेशन है? रिप्रेजेंटेशन तो है, लेकिन पार्टिसिपेशन कितना है ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। सिर्फ दे देने से अगर लीडरशिप क्वालिटी आती तो शायद बिहार में सबसे ज्यादा स्टेट और नेशनल लेवल पे महिलाएं उभर के आती, क्योंकि बाकी के स्टेट में 30 और 33% रिजर्वेशन है और इन बिहार में 50% रिजर्वेशन है। और जो पिछला इलेक्शन था वो उस वक्त 54% फीमेल रिप्रेजेंटेशन रहा पंचायती राज इलेक्शंस में। तो पार्टिसिपेशन बहुत जरूरी है। मैं अभी जब घूम रही थी चुनाव के दौरान, अभी बिहार इलेक्शन चल रहा है, यहाँ पे पंचायतों का इलेक्शन चल रहा है, तो मैंने देखा वहां तो बैनर लगे थे, पोस्टर्स लगे थे, वहां पे जो कैंडिडेट है वो फीमेल है लेकिन उनके फोटोग्राफ्स नहीं है, उसमें मेल का फोटोग्राफ्स है, उनके पति का है और सिर्फ एक छोटा सा एक कोना में नाम दिया गया है जिससे पता चलता है कि जो कैंडिडेट है वो फीमेल है, और बाकी पोस्टर में मुस्कुराता हुआ जो चेहरा है और तगड़ी मूंछों वाला और विदाउट मूंछ वाला वो पति का है या ससुर का हो सकता है। तो मैं फिर से कहना चाहूंगी कि आखिर क्या चीज है कि रिजर्वेशन के बावजूद भी पार्टिसिपेशन नहीं है। दैट इज जो मुझे लगा क्या है महिलाओं में, मुझे लगता है कि क्या ऐसी वजह है पा रहे हैं निकल करके। तो मुझे जो लगता है वो है कि क्या जिस तरह से पुरुष काम करते हैं और उनका जो इनकम का हिस्सा है, लेकिन दिन भर महिलाएं घर में काम करती हैं, खेतों में काम करती हैं, दिन भर पुरुष से ज्यादा काम करती हैं, फिर भी वो जीडीपी का हिस्सा नहीं है। यानी उनका जो काम है वो किसी भी श्रेणी में काउंटेबल नहीं हो पाता है, इनकम में कन्वर्ट करके हम उसको नहीं दिखा सकते हैं। ये एक बहुत बड़ा मुद्दा है जिसमें होता क्या है कि अगर आखिर क्यों ऐसा कहा जाता है कि वो पुरुष प्रधान सोसाइटी है, कहीं ना कहीं से जो एक सबसे महत्वपूर्ण चीज होता है वो है अर्निंग। अगर आप घर का कोई अर्निंग मेंबर है, वो जो पैसे कमा के लाता है, उसकी बातें सुनी जाती हैं और उसका ही चलता है। यही है पैट्रियार्कल सोसाइटी। महिला जो काम करती है वो मैंने फिर से कहा कि जीडीपी का हिस्सा नहीं है, वो काउंटेबल नहीं होता है उसका। तो कहीं ना कहीं से उसके अंदर वो कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं रहता है, उनकी बातों को दबा दिया जाता है और जो पैसे कमा के लाता है उसका ही सुना जाता है। तो ये चीज है कि लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन जो है वो पूरे भारत में ही अगर देखा जाए तो फीमेल लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन बहुत कम है। तो ये सारी चीजें हैं। मुझे लगता है कि अगर जब तक हम जेंडर इक्वलिटी की बात नहीं करेंगे, जब तक हम ये नहीं देखेंगे कि हमने जो बच्चों को पढ़ाया, बेटे और बेटी को, तो क्या वो हमारे दिमाग में बराबर का था? क्या हमारे दिमाग में जब हम प्रॉपर्टी में शेयर की बात करते हैं तो क्या हमारे दिमाग में ये बराबर का आता है कि अगर हमारा बेटा और बेटी है तो हम उसको बराबर का प्रॉपर्टी में शेयर देंगे? मैं तो बिहार में ये देखती हूँ कि अगर हमारे 3 बेटे हैं और 1 बेटी है तो हम प्रॉपर्टी का 4 हिस्से की बात नहीं सोचते। हमें लगता है तीनों बेटे को बराबर का हिस्सा मिलेगा और बेटी को दहेज देंगे या नहीं देंगे उसे हम ससुराल भेज देंगे। तो इस तरह के माइंडसेट के साथ बीइंग अ फादर, बीइंग अ मदर, बीइंग अ ब्रदर एंड सिस्टर, हमारे दिमाग में जब ये नहीं आता है कि महिलाओं का भी प्रॉपर्टी में राइट है, जबकि कानून ने हमें वो राइट्स दिए हैं। कानून ने कहा है कि पिता की संपत्ति में बेटी का बराबरी का हिस्सा है, बावजूद भी हम एज ए फादर, एज ए मदर वो चीज हम अपनी बेटी को नहीं दे पा रहे, वो हिस्सा हम अपनी बेटी को नहीं दे पा रहे हैं। बेटी के मायके में बेटी का जो रूम है, 2 कमरे हैं, उसमें ताले नहीं लगे हुए हैं। वो जब अपने मायके तभी आ सकती है जब उसके भाई उसको बुलाएंगे। तो जब वहां से आप बेटियों को शुरू से ही कमजोर करते चले जाएंगे, चाहे वो एजुकेशन की बात हो, फ्रीडम की बात हो, इक्वालिटी की बात हो, आप कमजोर करते चले जाएंगे और एक जगह पे आप आकर के कहेंगे कि पार्टिसिपेशन क्यों नहीं है, पार्टिसिपेशन क्यों नहीं है, लीडरशिप क्वालिटी क्यों नहीं उभर के आ रही है, फीमेल लीडरशिप स्टेट लेवल पे, नेशनल लेवल पे क्यों नहीं आ रही है, वो वोकल क्यों नहीं हो रही है, वो अपने आप को दिखा क्यों नहीं पा रही है। हमने तो रिजर्वेशन दे दिया 50%, 30%, इतने रिजर्वेशन के बावजूद भी पार्टिसिपेशन क्यों नहीं बढ़ रहा है। तो हमें रूट्स में जाने की जरूरत है। आज भी महिलाएं सबसे ज्यादा डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस की शिकार तब होती हैं, गांव में मैंने देखा है, जब वो पति से पैसे मांगती हैं कि मुझे पैसे चाहिए, घर की जरूरतों को पूरा करना है, घर के लिए कुछ सामान खरीदना है, तो वो सबसे ज्यादा बुरी तरह से पीटी जाती हैं। कब पीटी जाती हैं? जब वो पति से पैसे मांगती हैं। वो कहाँ कमजोर है? फिनेंशियल कमजोर है। ऐसे कई तरह की चीजें हैं। जैसे कि एग्जांपल तो मान लीजिए कि कभी कभी ऐसा होता है कि बच्चों को पढ़ाना है, तो पैसे बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है पेरेंट्स के पास, तो उनके पास चॉइस आता है, तो वो बेटे को बाहर पढ़ने के लिए भेज देते हैं, लेकिन बेटी को घर में रख लेते हैं। बेटी को चाहते हैं कि वो जो नियर बाय गवर्नमेंट स्कूल है या कुछ भी है वहां पढ़ ले, वहां पर वो खर्च बेटी के ऊपर नहीं करना चाहते, क्योंकि उनको वो लगता है कि ये तो चले जाना है, ये तो पढ़ाया है, इसको बहुत इम्पावर करके करना क्या है। एक छोटा सा बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग एक चीज मैं बताना चाहूंगी, जो कि जैसे बिहार में क्या है कि 33% का रिजर्वेशन सभी गवर्नमेंट जॉब में दिया गया, जिसके कारण ये हुआ कि यहाँ जो पुलिस की जो भर्ती हुई यहाँ पे, उसमें महिलाओं की भर्ती बहुत ज्यादा हुई, वो बहुत ज्यादा वहां पे महिलाओं को भर्ती दी गई, वो सिलेक्ट हुई पुलिस की जॉब में बिकॉज ऑफ द रिजर्वेशन ओनली। लेकिन आप देखेंगे कि उस दौरान क्राइम बहुत बढ़ गया, बहुत ज्यादा बिहार में क्राइम बहुत बढ़ गया। कारण क्या है कि उनको जॉब दे दी गई, पुलिस की नौकरी में वो आ गई, लेकिन उनके मसल्स, उनकी ताकत, उनको गन कैसे चलाना है, वो कैसे किसी गूंज से फाइट कर पाएंगी, वो कैसे किसी अगर कोई ऐसा कैसे उसको हैंडल कर पाएंगी, बिना ट्रेनिंग के अगर आप उनको गन दे देते हो और आपको फायर करना पता नहीं है, ठीक है, कि आपने उनको दे दिया, चूंकि आपको पॉलिटिकली या किसी भी तरह से आपको दिखाना है कि फीमेल का पार्टिसिपेशन जो है वो इक्वली जो है 33% रिजर्वेशन आपने दिए, लेकिन आपके उनके हाथ में आपने गन भी पकड़ा दी, मगर वो नहीं जानते कि उसको फायर कैसे करना है। तो मैं ये नहीं कहती हूँ, मैं किसी के खिलाफ नहीं हूँ, लेकिन वो ट्रेनिंग उतनी ही अच्छी होनी चाहिए थी कि नहीं। जैसे कि फॉरेन कंट्रीज में, बाहर में होता यह है कि अगर कोई महिला पुलिस है तो वो इक्वली फाइट कर सकती है, किसी भी गुन्स के साथ वो लड़ सकती है, क्योंकि उसकी ट्रेनिंग, उसका सब कुछ इतना जबरदस्त होता है। तो मुझे लगता है कि सिर्फ रिजर्वेशन दे करके आप वो फायर नहीं कर सकते हैं, वो चीजें नहीं आ सकती हैं जब तक कि आप उसको पार्टिसिपेशन के लायक नहीं बनाएंगे। और पार्टिसिपेशन के लायक बनाने के लिए ये रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी क्या सोसाइटी की नहीं है, ये रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी पूरी तरह से सोसाइटी की भी बनती है, पेरेंट्स की बनती है, घर की बनती है, कि कैसे हम पहले महिलाओं को मजबूत करें। जब तक हम जन्म से ही महिलाओं को एक मजबूती नहीं देंगे, तब तक हम कहीं भी जाकर के पार्टिसिपेशन की बात हम नहीं कर सकते हैं, चाहे वो किसी जॉब में हो, चाहे वो कहीं लीडरशिप की बात हो, चाहे वो किसी भी लेवल पे जाकर के बात हो। ये बहुत रेयर होता है, रेयरेस्ट ऑफ द रेयर ऐसा होता है कि कोई एक फीमेल जो है वो काफी अच्छे लीडरशिप के तौर पे उभरती है, उसको मौका मिलता है तो वो उभरती है। हम तो यहाँ पे देखते हैं कि रिजर्वेशन मिल गया तो पुरुष के चेहरे पे एक अजीब सा दुख है कि रिजर्वेशन मिल गया इसलिए पत्नी को खड़ा करना पड़ रहा है, और अदरवाइज तो मेरा ही चेहरा होता और मैं ही होता। वो ये कहते हैं कि हमने पत्नी को खड़ा किया है चुनाव में, क्यों? क्योंकि हम नहीं खड़े हो सकते ना, रिजर्वेशन जो आ गया है, ये जो रिजर्वेशन आ गया उसने सारा काम खराब कर दिया, इसलिए पत्नी को खड़ा किया है या बहन को खड़ा किया है, बाकी काम तो हम ही करेंगे। और यही वजह है कि कई बार चेकबुक पे और कई बार जो डॉक्यूमेंट्स साइन करते हैं वो भी यहाँ पे मुखिया पति, मुखिया भाई, मुखिया ससुर कोई भी साइन करता है, लेकिन वो महिला सिर्फ रबर स्टैम्प की तरह यूज होती है। तो मुझे ये लगता है नंदिता सीरियसली कि पार्टिसिपेशन ज्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है, रिजर्वेशन से, रिप्रेजेंटेशन से ज्यादा जरूरी जो है वो पार्टिसिपेशन है, और रिजर्वेशन तो मुझे लगता है कि बात की बात है। थैंक यू सो मच। मुझे लगता है मैंने बहुत
बहुत सही कहा। तो रितु जी is saying that is reservation the answer or is participation what we want? when once they come, once they're elected and then they come, is it too late to ask, why are you not participating? She says it was way, way, way back when the child or the young girl was growing up and how she was socialized into thinking and being and believing. Thank you, Rituji. बहुत relevant बातें आपने की है. We'll come back to you. I would now like to invite Advocate Reena Parveen. Reena ji is the chairperson from Ghazipur Upazila Parishad in Bangladesh. Reena ji will be speaking in Bangla. So if anybody wants, can go into the Bangla channel and hear an interpretation. So Reena ji, the floor is yours.
ধন্যবাদ প্রিয়া মার্তা ফেরেল ফাউন্ডেশন, সবাইকে আমার সালাম, আসসালামু আলাইকুম। আমাকে আপনাদের সাথে কথা বলার সুযোগ করে দেওয়ার জন্য আপনাদের সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি বাংলাদেশের পক্ষ থেকে এবং আমার উপজেলা পরিষদের পক্ষ থেকে। আমরা যে বিষয়গুলো নিয়ে ইতিমধ্যে কথা বললাম, সবার কথা শুনলাম, সে বিষয়টা ছিল স্থানীয় সরকারে যেভাবে আমরা পার্টিসিপেট করতে পারছি, জাতীয় পর্যায়ে কেন নয়। সেই ক্ষেত্রে যদি বলি যে আমার বাংলাদেশের যাত্রাটা খুব ছোট, মাত্র 50 বছর হলো বাংলাদেশের অভিষেক হয়েছে। সে 50 বছরের মধ্যে সামরিক শাসন ছিল, একাধিকবার সরকার পরিবর্তন হয়েছে। তার পরবর্তী সময় 90-এর পর থেকে যে আমাদের দেশে গণতান্ত্রিক সরকার ব্যবস্থার প্রবর্তন হয়েছে, সেখানে নারীদের জন্য শুধুমাত্র স্থানীয় পর্যায়ে, আপনারা যদি জানেন যে বাংলাদেশে স্থানীয় পর্যায়ে 5টা টায়ার আছে: ইউনিয়ন পরিষদ, উপজেলা পরিষদ, জেলা পরিষদ, পৌরসভা, সিটি কর্পোরেশন। এই 5টা অর্গানে 5টা পর্যায়ে জাতীয় স্থানীয় শাসন পরিষদ। ন্যাশনাল পর্যায়ে আমাদের সংখ্যা হলো, সদস্য সংখ্যা হলো 300। আর সিলেক্টেড মেম্বার, পার্লামেন্ট মেম্বার আগে ছিল 30 জন। এটা পর্যায়ক্রমে মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী জননেত্রী শেখ হাসিনা এটাকে 50-এ উন্নীত করেছে। এখন 50 জন সিলেক্টেড পার্লামেন্ট মেম্বার। আর ইলেক্টেড পার্লামেন্ট মেম্বার নারীর ক্ষেত্রে খুব কম, সেটা খুব বেশি নয়। তো জাতীয় পর্যায়ে কিন্তু নারীর যে আমাদের আজকের যে বিষয়বস্তু, সেটা হলো স্থানীয় পর্যায়ে একটা কোঠা ভিত্তিক নির্বাচন হয়, সেখানে শুধু নারীদের প্রতিযোগী থাকে। যেমন দেখা গেছে এর আগে শুধু সিলেক্টেড ছিল, স্থানীয় সরকারের বিষয়গুলো ছিল সিলেক্টেড, যে কোনো একটা বডি দিয়ে সিলেক্টেড করে যে 3 জন সদস্য সংখ্যা থাকবে নারী। কিন্তু 1997 সালে মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী যখন 96 সালে জননেত্রী শেখ হাসিনা ক্ষমতায় আসলেন, আসার পরে নারীদেরকে কোঠা ভিত্তিক নির্বাচন করার সুযোগ করে দিলেন। সেখানে একটি ওয়ার্ডে একজন পুরুষ সদস্য নির্বাচিত হয়, সেখানে 3টি ওয়ার্ড নিয়ে একজন নারী সদস্যকে নির্বাচন করতে হয়। কিন্তু সেই ক্ষেত্রে বরাদ্দ, নারীর যে উন্নয়নের বরাদ্দ কিন্তু 3 জনের সমান দেওয়া হয় না, 1 জনের সমান দেওয়া হয়। এটা আগে ছিলই না, এখন কিছুটা হয়েছে এবং 1 জনের দেওয়া হয়। তো সেক্ষেত্রে আমার দেশের স্থানীয় পর্যায়ে ইউনিয়ন পরিষদের সংখ্যা হলো আপনার 4665। সেখানে আমার দেশের স্থানীয় ইউনিয়ন পরিষদের সংখ্যা 4562। সেখানে ইলেক্টেড পুরুষ এবং মহিলা সম্মিলিত ভাবে 41,508। আর সেখানে নারীর ক্ষেত্রে হলো 13,686 এই সংখ্যাটা। উপজেলা পর্যায়ে দেখা গেছে যে আমার উপজেলার সংখ্যা হলো 492। সেখানে মহিলা ভাইস চেয়ারম্যান একজন করে নির্বাচিত হওয়ার সুযোগ আছে। পৌরসভাতে 330টা আছে আমার সিট, এবং সিটি কর্পোরেশনে 8টা। সেই সকল ক্ষেত্রগুলোতেই নারীদের জন্য একটা সিলেক্ট নির্দিষ্ট করা দেয়া আছে, নারী কোঠা ভিত্তিক নির্বাচন করার সুযোগ আছে। কিন্তু সেখানে খুব কম সংখ্যক ক্ষেত্রেই, যদি আমি আপনাদেরকে যদি স্থানীয় সরকার ব্যবস্থায় একটি কথা বলি, যে 2000 আমার এই উপজেলা পরিষদ 2009 যখন পুনঃপ্রবর্তন করা হলো, সেই ক্ষেত্রে 492 জন উপজেলা চেয়ারম্যানের মধ্যে মাত্র 2 জন নারী চেয়ারম্যান ছিলেন। এবং 2014 সালে যখন এই উপজেলা পরিষদ নির্বাচন করা হলো, সেখানে মাত্র 3 জন নারী চেয়ারম্যান ছিলেন। পরবর্তীতে যখন 2009 সালে নারী উপজেলা পরিষদ নির্বাচন করা হলো, তখন এখানে মাত্র আমরা 9 জন নারী চেয়ারম্যান আছি সারা বাংলাদেশে। আর আমি যে কথাটা আসলে বলতে চাচ্ছি যে আমাদের যে রাজনৈতিক যাত্রা সেটা কিন্তু শুরু হয়েছিল আমার যে 32 বছর আগে ছাত্র রাজনীতি দিয়ে। যখন আমি কলেজ ছাত্র সংসদ নির্বাচন করি, তখন কলেজ ছাত্র সংসদ নির্বাচনের মাধ্যমেই আমার রাজনৈতিক জীবন শুরু হয়েছিল। পরবর্তী পর্যায়ে পড়াশোনার পাশে আমি সরাসরি রাজনৈতিক দলের সাথে সম্পৃক্ত হই এবং আমি আমার জীবনে ব্যক্তিগতভাবে বেছে নেই আইন পেশাকে, যেখানে মানুষের কথা বলার সুযোগ থাকে এবং আমি রাজনীতিটা পাশাপাশি করতে পারবো এবং রাজনৈতিক দলের সাথে সম্পৃক্ত থাকতে পারবো। সেই জায়গা থেকেই আমি কোনো সরকারি চাকরি বা অন্য কোনো কাজের সাথে সম্পৃক্ত হই নাই। শুধুমাত্র রাজনৈতিক ভাবে লিডারশিপ বিল্ড আপ, মানুষের অধিকার নিয়ে কথা এবং মানুষকে কিভাবে সেবা দেওয়া যায় এবং কিভাবে লিডারশিপ বিল্ড আপ করা যায়, নারীরা কিভাবে কর্মক্ষেত্রে দক্ষতা যোগ্যতা অর্জন করতে পারে, কিভাবে চ্যালেঞ্জিং জব করতে পারে, সেই সব বিষয়গুলোকে মাথায় রেখেই আমি আমার জীবনটা এইভাবে মানে শুরু করেছিলাম। তারই অংশ হিসাবে বিভিন্ন সময় লিডারশিপ বিল্ড আপ করার জন্য আমি সে আইনজীবী থাকা অবস্থায় আমি সেই আইনজীবী পরিবারে নির্বাচন করি, বার কাউন্সিলে বারে নির্বাচন করি, সেখানে আমি ইলেক্টেড হই, নির্বাচন করি সরাসরি। তার পরবর্তীতে আমি সরাসরি রাজনৈতিক দলের গাজীপুর জেলা মহিলা যুব মহিলা আওয়ামী লীগের রাজনীতিতে সম্পৃক্ত হই, সেখানে আমি প্রেসিডেন্ট নির্বাচিত হই। পরবর্তীতে দেখা যাচ্ছে যে আমি জনগণের মাঝে এই উপজেলা পরিষদে 22 চেয়ারম্যান হিসেবে 2009 সালে 10 লক্ষ ভোটারের মধ্যে নির্বাচন করে বাংলাদেশের সর্বোচ্চ ভোটে 22 চেয়ারম্যান নির্বাচিত হয়ে 2009 সালে। তার পরবর্তী সময় আমি জেলা মহিলা আওয়ামী লীগের দায়িত্ব পাই 2016 সালে। তখন থেকে আমি সরাসরি রাজনীতির সাথে সম্পৃক্ত এবং আমার আইন পেশায় সম্পৃক্ত। সেই জার্নিটাকে মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী 2009 সালে আমাকে এই জাতীয় প্রতীক দিয়ে নির্বাচন করার 2019 সালে আমাকে জাতীয় প্রতীক দিয়ে নির্বাচন করার সুযোগ করে দেয়। সেখানে আমি সেই নির্বাচনে অংশগ্রহণ করি এবং সরাসরি জনগণের ভোটে ইলেক্টেড হই। তো এই পর্যায়ে আমাদের যে বিষয়গুলা এখানে আমরা যে জিনিসগুলা বাধার সম্মুখীন হই, যে সেখানে আমাদের একজনের কথা আমরা শুনেছি অত্যন্ত মনোযোগ দিয়ে, যে আমাদের দেশে যে বিষয়টা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের দেশে ওই একটা পর্যায় পর্যন্ত মেয়েদের রাজনীতি বা মেয়ে কোনোভাবে এলাও করে, উপরের পর্যায়গুলোতে সেটা সহনশীল মাত্রায় নেই। সেক্ষেত্রে আমি যেটা মনে করি যে কিভাবে এটাকে বিল্ড আপ করা যায়, সেক্ষেত্রে আমাদের যেমন নারীদের আত্মবিশ্বাসের বিষয় আছে, দীর্ঘ স্ট্রাগল করে আসতে হয়। আজকে 32 বছর যাবত আমার এই জার্নি শুরু হয়েছে। এত বড় জার্নিটা আমাদেরকে করতে হয়, সেক্ষেত্রে আত্মবিশ্বাসী হতে হয়, মেয়েদেরকে শিক্ষা প্রয়োজন আছে। সেখানে আমার দেশে যে সমস্যাগুলো আমরা ফেস করি, যে আমার দেশে কিছু কুসংস্কার আছে, কিছু অপসংস্কৃতি আছে, কিছু ইসলামের ভুল ব্যাখ্যা আছে, যেখানে আমার দেশে প্রায় 90% মুসলিম, সেখানে আমার কিছু ভুল ব্যাখ্যা দেওয়া হয়, কিছু আলেম ওলামারা কিছু ফতোয়া দিয়ে নারী বিদ্বেষী কথাবার্তা বলে সেখানে আমাদেরকে ডিমোরালাইজ করে, সেটাও আমাদের একটা আছে। আমাদের মানসিক ভাবে ভেঙে পড়ার জন্য বিভিন্ন কারণে বিভিন্ন ভাবে সামাজিক ভাবে হেয় করার জন্য বিভিন্ন ভাবে কিছু কথা, কিছু সামাজিক ছেলেদের তুলনায় অনেকগুলো বাধা আমাদেরকে পেরিয়ে আজকের জায়গায় আসতে হয়। সেখানে আমাদের পারিবারিক সাপোর্ট যেমন দরকার, তেমনি পারিবারিক সমর্থন, আর্থিক অবস্থা, ক্যাপাবিলিটি, সেখানে নির্বাচন করার মতো আর্থিক স্বাবলম্বী হওয়ার জন্য সেটাও আমাদের প্রয়োজন। যে ক্ষেত্রে আমি সবচেয়ে বেশি প্রয়োজন মনে করি যে মেয়েদেরকে যদি আর্থিকভাবে সক্ষম না করা হয়, যেমন তাদেরকে যদি পদায়ন করা না হয়, তাদেরকে যদি উৎসাহিত না করা হয়, তাহলে কিন্তু এই চ্যালেঞ্জিং কাজটা এদেশে সম্ভব নয়। তারপরও আমরা এখন যেটা আমরা মনে করছি যে বাংলাদেশের যে দলগুলো আছে, রাজনৈতিক দলগুলো আছে, এক্ষেত্রে কিন্তু প্রত্যেকটা রাজনৈতিক দলেরই কিন্তু একটা গঠনতন্ত্র আছে। সেই গঠনতন্ত্রে কিন্তু বলা আছে তারা কত পার্সেন্ট কি কি কাজগুলো করবে। সেখানে কিন্তু তাদের গঠনতন্ত্রে, প্রতিটা রাজনৈতিক দলের গঠনতন্ত্রে বলা থাকে যে, বিশেষ করে বাংলাদেশ আওয়ামী লীগের গঠনতন্ত্র বা আরেকটা বড় দল আছে বিএনপির গঠনতন্ত্রে বলা আছে 30% নারীকে এখানে রাজনৈতিকভাবে প্রতিষ্ঠিত করা হবে। কিন্তু দেখা যাচ্ছে যে আমরা এই মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী জননেত্রী শেখ হাসিনা নিরলস ভাবে কাজ করে যাচ্ছেন আমাদের নারীর ক্ষমতায়নের জন্য। সেই ক্ষমতায়নের জন্য কাজ করতে গিয়ে কিন্তু বাংলাদেশে আপনারা জানেন যে জাতিসংঘে আমাদের নারীদের জন্য যে কাজ করছেন তার জন্য কিন্তু আমরা 2016 সালে প্ল্যানেট 50-50 অ্যাওয়ার্ড লাভ করেছি। জেন্ডার ডিসক্রিমিনেশন নিয়েও কিন্তু আমরা কাজ করছে এবং আমাদের মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী কিন্তু সেই লক্ষ্য কাজ করছে। কিন্তু আমাদের সেই হতাশার জায়গা হলো একটা, যেটা হলো আমাদের যে রাজনৈতিকভাবে যে 30% কোঠা আমাদেরকে এস্টাবলিশ করার কথা, সেই জায়গাটা কিন্তু আমরা এখনো আমাদের সেই জায়গাটা কিন্তু এখনো আসেনি, বা আমরা সেই জায়গাটা কিন্তু এখনো ফুলফিল করতে পারিনি। এবং সংরক্ষিত নারী আসনে আমরা যেটা বলেন যে তাদের কিন্তু কোনো, আমাদের বাংলাদেশে সংরক্ষিত যে নারী আসন, সেখানে 50টি আসন থাকলেও তাদের কোনো কর্ম পরিকল্পনা নাই। তারা কোন এলাকায় কাজ করবে, ডেভেলপ করবে কোথায়, তাদের নির্দিষ্ট বাজেট, তাদের নির্দিষ্ট এলাকা কিন্তু সুনির্দিষ্ট করা নাই। সেই ক্ষেত্রে আমি মনে করি এটা একটা অর্নামেন্টারি পোস্ট। এই অলংকৃত পোস্ট আমরা ওইভাবে চাই না। আমরা চাই যে আমাদের জন্য যে 30% আছে, সেই 30% সরাসরি নির্বাচনের মাধ্যমে আমরা অংশগ্রহণ করতে চাই। এবং সেই ক্ষেত্রে রাজনৈতিক দলগুলো সদিচ্ছা থাকা দরকার। যেহেতু রাজনৈতিক দলের প্রতিনিধি হিসেবে আমরা আজকে রাজনীতি দলের প্রতিনিধিত্ব করছি, আমি সেই জায়গাটা বলবো, সেই জায়গাতে এবং নারীর ক্ষমতায়নের জন্য অন্যান্য নারীদের যেভাবে পদায়ন করা দরকার, সেভাবে পদায়নগুলো করা দরকার। বর্তমান সরকার যদিও আমাদের বাংলাদেশের সরকার জননেত্রী শেখ হাসিনা সে কাজগুলো করছেন, যে বিনা বেতনে ছাত্রীদেরকে দ্বাদশ শ্রেণী পর্যন্ত পড়াশোনার খরচ দিচ্ছেন, উপবৃত্তি দিয়ে তাদেরকে উৎসাহিত করছেন, বয়স্ক ভাতা দিচ্ছেন, বিধবা ভাতা দিচ্ছেন, সাক্ষরতা, বয়স্ক শিক্ষার ব্যবস্থা করেছেন। তারপর দেখা গেছে যে আমাদের এই নারীদেরকে সহ অনেকগুলা সুবিধার আওতায় এনেছেন। তারপরও আমরা যেটা আমাদের এই রাজনৈতিক দলের সদিচ্ছা হলে এবং আমাদের আত্মবিশ্বাস এবং আমাদের আর্থিক বা কার্যকর্ম পরিকল্পনা থাকলে, সেক্ষেত্রে যদি আমরা নিরলস পরিশ্রম করি, সেই ক্ষেত্রে হয়তো বা আমরা আমাদের কাঙ্ক্ষিত লক্ষ্যে পৌঁছতে পারবো। আপনাদের মাধ্যমে, এই ফোরামের মাধ্যমে আপনাদের আমার এটাই চাওয়া যে কোঠা পদ্ধতিতে অলংকৃত না হয়ে আমরা আমাদের নির্দিষ্ট 30% কোঠায় আমরা সরাসরি নির্বাচন করে যোগ্যতার ভিত্তিতে আমাদেরকে সেভাবে পদায়ন করা হোক, আমাদের সেই সুযোগটা আজকের দিনে এটাই আমার চাওয়া। সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ, সবাই ভালো থাকবেন। Thank you,
Reena ji. So I hope that we went into the channel and we could hear and understand what Reena ji was saying. She talked about the challenges that she has faced, since college, when she joined politics. It was not just the environment, but it's also her religion, and it was her culture and family. All of those challenges. I would now like to call on Bhim Bhao. Bhim Raskar ji is the director of RSCD. And Bhim Bhao, we've heard all these experiences, from so many elected representatives here, leaders here, members of parliament here. What do you think, in your opinion, what are some of the things that, because it's no point just talking about it, we know what the issues are, but going forward, what are some of the things or some of the actions that might be needed, to further participation of women and the mobility of women from local level to national and provincial and national?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nandita ji. And we are like a family member of the joint family, Martha Farrell Foundation and Priya, and we feel very assured that in Delhi we have our team there. And congrats, Priya, Martha Farrell Foundation, for being with us in this whole process. I'm not going to analyze the thing as Nandita ji said, because analysis काफी हुआ है, क्या करना चाहिए. So one thing is very important कि constitution and reservation is a section 15 कहता है कि ये positive discrimination है, but in society it is completely a discrimination. I think this thing we need to think कि इसके बारे में हम क्या करें. So one thing महिला राज सत्ता आंदोलन has tried and we are quite successful is, मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि mass mobilization करना बहुत जरूरी है. जैसे कि एप्रिसिएशन कन्वेंशन हम लोग लेते हैं, सब लोग एक साथ आते हैं और इसका जो एक दूसरे के ऊपर असर होता है, ये बहुत जरूरी है. एंड दैट्स व्हाई रिजर्वेशन के साथ साथ अभी कुछ लोग बात कर रहे थे, आई रियली थैंकफुल टू ऑल द स्पीकर्स, बहुत अच्छी बातें सामने लाई है. तो इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि ये रिजर्वेशन के साथ हैंड होल्डिंग सपोर्ट बहुत जरूरी है. मास मोबिलाइजेशन बहुत जरूरी है। और इसके प्रोसेसेस हम लोग, जैसे मैं कहता हूँ कि महिला राष्ट्रसत्ता आंदोलन एक स्टेट में चल रहा है, लेकिन हर एक स्टेट में ये होना चाहिए, और उसका एक नेशनल भी एक सारे मिलकर संगठन होना जरूरी है। दैट इज वन थिंग। मुझे लगता है कि हैंड होल्डिंग सपोर्ट बहुत कम है, रिजर्वेशन आया है, एप्रिसिएशन बहुत कम है, रिजर्वेशन आया है। सेकंड, पता नहीं आप लोग बुरा मानेंगे, लेकिन मेरा मानना ये है कि वी डोंट वांट टू वर्क विद पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज। और ये पूरा प्रमोशनल पॉलिटिक्स जो रुका है, खासतौर पे महिलाओं के बारे में, इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि महिलाओं की विंग इतनी वीक क्यों है, महिलाओं की विंग सेकेंडरी ने टर्शियरी क्यों है। एंड आई थिंक वी ट्राई टू अवॉइड दिस वर्किंग विद दिस विंग्स। वी हैव ट्राइड। हम लोगों ने एक सर्वपक्षीय महिला संवाद गठ तैयार किया है, उनके साथ भी काम कर रहे हैं। रिस्पॉन्स धीरे धीरे आ रहा है, बट इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि एक भी पार्टी की, किसी की भी वुमेन्स विंग स्ट्रांग नहीं है। किसी भी पार्टी की वुमेन्स विंग को जो ये होना चाहिए, वॉइस होना चाहिए, वो नहीं है। We need to work with them. Why they are secondary? This is one thing. And secondly, मुझे लगता है कि पार्टी ओरिएंटेशन ऑफ वुमेन लीडर्स इज वेरी एसेंशियल। कौन पार्टी कैसी है, कैसा उनका जन्म हुआ है, मुझे लगता है दिस इज एसेंशियल। वी हैव अवॉइडेड दिस। तो पहली बात यह है कि रिजर्वेशन है, रिजर्वेशन होने के बाद मोबिलाइजेशन और हैंड होल्डिंग सपोर्ट एक इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है। दूसरी बात यह है कि पार्टी के साथ काम करना, वुमेन्स विंग के साथ काम करना, और पार्टी के बारे में ओरिएंटेशन करना महिलाओं का। नहीं तो प्रोमोशनल पॉलिटिक्स नहीं होगा, महिलाएं पंचायत में आएगी, पंचायत से जाएगी। तो दिस इज सेकंड थिंग विद रिगार्ड टू पार्टीज। तीसरी बात है कि सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन करके मैं थोड़ा चैलेंज करना चाहता हूँ कि हम लोग कितना पॉलिटिक्स के बारे में, पार्टी पॉलिटिक्स के बारे में हम लोग कितना नजदीक जाते हैं। इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि पॉलिटिक्स के बारे में हम लोग काफी रिजर्वेशन है, वो बिकॉज ऑफ FCRA बाकी सारी चीजें हैं। लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि किसी भी लव पॉलिटिक्स, जॉइंट पॉलिटिक्स टू चेंज पॉलिटिक्स, ये हमारा नारा क्यों नहीं है? अगर ये नहीं है तो हम लोग केवल ऊपर ऊपर रिजर्वेशन का काम करते रहेंगे। तो इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि ये कैंपेन होना जरूरी है कि ऑल सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस आल्सो नीड टू गो फॉर दिस कैंपेन कि पॉलिटिक्स छोड़कर, और बेसिकली पार्टी पॉलिटिक्स छोड़कर, पार्टी में जाना चाहिए ऐसी बात नहीं है, लेकिन वी नीड टू लर्न पॉलिटिक्स वेरी क्लोजली, और वो मुझे लगता है कि हम लोग अवॉइड कर रहे हैं। तीसरी बात ये है कि आखिरी बात मैं कहूंगा कि बेसिकली ये डाइवर्सिटी ऑफ माइंडसेट की बात जो हो रही है, सब लोग कर रहे हैं, माइंडसेट अलग अलग है, उसमें डाइवर्सिटी है। मुझे लगता है कि ये बहुत जरूरी है कि मेन मेंबर जो चुनकर आ रहे हैं, मेन पॉलिटिशियन जो है, इनके साथ कौन काम करेगा। खाली हम महिला महिला वो सुनती है, वो आती है, मोबिलाइज होती है, इसलिए उनके साथ हम काम कर रहे हैं। इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू वर्क विथ इलेक्टेड मेन मेंबर्स ऑल्सो, और उनके साथ बात करके ये समझाना पड़ेगा, जैसे मराठी में हम लोग कहते हैं भिड़ना पड़ेगा कि व्हाट इज योर आइडियोलॉजी, क्या आप कह रहे हैं। तो मुझे लगता है इससे हम दूर रह रहे हैं, और वी आर ऑल्सो ट्राइंग हियर कि हम महिला राष्ट्रसत्ता आंदोलन के साथ ज्यादा से ज्यादा मेल मेंबर भी जुड़ जाए। केवल ये महिलाओं का इश्यू है ऐसे समझ के हम लोग सोसाइटी को, मेल मेंबर्स को बाहर रख रहे हैं, दिस इज नॉट करेक्ट। और इसके असर बहुत बुरे हो रहे हैं। एक असर हमारे यहाँ पर हो रहा है कि यू टर्न हो रहा है, महिलाएं आती है, 90-95% महिलाएं आती है और पंचायत से फिर वापस चली जाती है, आगे बढ़ती नहीं है। मुझे लगता है ये यू टर्न इज वेरी वेरी डेंजरस, इसका हम क्या करें। दूसरी बात हो रही है कि डिवीजन ऑफ टर्म्स, 5 साल का टर्म जो है एक साल का हो रहा है, 1 साल ये सरपंच, क्योंकि महिलाएं कुछ करने वाली नहीं है। तो मुझे लगता है ये डेमोक्रेसी को थ्रेट है। और तीसरी बात आ रही है ऑक्शन सेल। ये सरपंच पति, मुखिया पति तो है ही, लेकिन ये ऑक्शन सेल भी बहुत बढ़ते जा रहा है। मुझे लगता है इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू वर्क विथ ऑल दीज इश्यूज इन अ कलेक्टिव वे। मुझे आई फील वेरी हैप्पी टुडे कि ये इतनी सारी बातें सामने आई है। प्रिया ने ऑर्गेनाइज करने के बाद डेफिनेटली समझ में आ रहा है कि कौन तिब्बत के मुद्दे क्या चल रहा है, अलग अलग कंट्रीज के मुद्दे क्या है, बांग्लादेश के मुद्दे क्या है। मुझे लगता है ग्लोबली पैट्रियार्की हो, पार्टी का डोमिनेंस हो, इसमें सारे मुद्दे काफी सिमिलर आते हैं, जिसमें हम लोग क्या करेंगे, काम क्या करेंगे। मुझे लगता है कि वर्किंग विद मेन, हम लोग यहाँ पर जो ज्योतिबा जागर या सावित्री ज्योति का कॉम्बिनेशन करते हैं, बहुत जरूरी है। क्योंकि महिलाएं जो बोल रही है ना, वो मैडम ने सही कहा, बिहार की बहुत सही बात थी कि एक तो महिलाओं को एक तो सीता कहा जाता है और कैरेक्टर असैसिनेशन हो जाता है, या तो द्रौपदी कहा जाता है। पार्टी का एक लीडर है, घर में एक पति है, ग्राम सेवक भी है, फिर हम लोग जैसे ट्रेनिंग मेंटरिंग करने वाले हैं, और इलेक्शन में इन्वेस्टिंग करने वाले 5 लोग हैं जिनके साथ उनको एडजस्ट करना पड़ रहा है। सो आइदर सी इज अ द्रौपदी और सी इज अ सीता। तो मुझे लगता है ये बहुत डेंजरस है। काम जो चल रहा है वी आर वेरी हैप्पी विद द थिंग, लेकिन वो है ना हिल चढ़, बीच में काफी थकान आ रही है। हम सब लोग, तो बहुत जरूरी है इसमें जो भी चीजें मैं बता रहा हूँ, इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि सब लोग मिलकर इसकी स्ट्रैटेजीज को देखना है। लेकिन ये एक मेरा आखिरी मुद्दा है कि ग्लोबल फैसिलिटेशन सेंटर फॉर वुमेन्स पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप, ग्लोबल एंड नेशनल, ये दोनों जरूरी है। ये अगर होता है तो हम लोग जो कुछ प्रयास कर रहे हैं, 20-21 साल से इसमें काम कर रहे हैं, मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जो रितु मैडम या पहले किसी ने बताया, ये बहुत जरूरी है कि रिजर्वेशन विदाउट पार्टिसिपेशन ये केवल नाम के वास्ते मन को ठीक शांति मिलने वाली बात होगी और हम लोग काम करते रहेंगे। तो इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि एक नेशनल लेवल पे और ग्लोबल लेवल पे ऐसा फैसिलिटेशन सेंटर हो जो हैंड होल्डिंग का काम करे। और ये अगर करते हैं तो मुझे लगता है कि जो प्रोसेस चल रही है उनको बहुत सही तरीके से ताकत मिलेगी। And thank you all the speakers. Thank you Priya and Martha Farrell Foundation. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhimbao. Bhimbao has given some really concrete steps of what to do next. Lina, I'm going to quickly call you in for quick last comments on way forward. What can we all do together? So Bhimbao is also saying that, this is not something that one can do alone. We all need to be together. We all need to work together. We need to work with the men as well. It's not a woman's issue. Very important. So some last comments from you, Lina, before I hand over to Dr. Tandon for consolidation and ways forward further. Yes, Lina.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nandita.
Some last comments from you on way forward.
Yeah, that's right. What a fascinating panel, and indeed it was so very interesting to hear these personal stories and journeys, and I fully agree with the previous Pim Raskal's proposals regarding the way forward in terms of we still need the good old mobilization. I mean, it seems that nothing really changed unless you have the volumes as well behind your case. So the whole old Andolan is still very much alive and needed, as well as what he said about the actual concrete hand-holding support and the work that civil society can do. And I was quite touched by what you said, Namgyal, about your story. And I think empathy is really the superpower of this century. And I think pandemic showed how women are in fact better leaders, in the sense that the kind of in a way, in times of crisis, we saw New Zealand, Taiwan, Finland, Norway, and the whole language of empathy actually gained currency. New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern talked about the team of 5 million, not in terms of military words of fighting this virus or fighting this battle, but rather really the language of empathy. And I think Ritu Jaiswal, I think she was so right what she said about how critical it is, how the girl child is grown and raised. And I think that speaks to the difficult question of how the women's political participation really goes hand in hand with democratization and this whole melting away of patriarchy, slowly, but surely. And even listening to Ibu Timo's journey. She is an elected member of one of the world's biggest democracies, and yet she too mentioned how important the family support was during her journey. And I'm sure there are many more struggles behind her success that maybe we didn't have time to hear so much about. So yeah, thank you so much for all these wonderful ideas and thoughts. And just final word that, of course, we talked about the quotas and reservation. Of course, there are quotas and quotas. I mean, there is a lot of, you can combine the quotas with elected positions, and the importance, what we didn't have time for is the importance of electoral system and how that impacts whether you have a list PR, first past the post, parallel system. All these technical issues have also political implications. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lena. Dr. Tandon, I hand over to you now to to close and to basically say that where are we heading and what do we really need to do, as people so invested in this issue now. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nandita. Thank you all. मैं तो बड़ी देर से इतने मन से आप लोगों की बातें सुन रहा हूँ. I'm really grateful to you for providing such wonderful examples and stories and levers of change. That this is an area of work that all of us have been invested in for decades, and we need to figure this out going forward. I picked up a number of messages, and I want to share that. I think the first message really is that Lena started this very well by saying that if the purpose is affirmative action and reservation at the local government level, that's where it will stay. That does not necessarily translate into higher tiers of governance at provincial or national level. It has nothing to do with the quality, competence, willingness, motivation, demonstrated ability of women elected representatives. It has to do with the fact that we do not have mechanisms to ensure similar political mandates at higher tiers of governance. And this is a very important recognition, and thank you, Lena, for bringing that out so well. I think the changes have come about for such political representation to be mandated at national, provincial, and local level. Those changes have come about in recently amended constitutions following, in a way, transformative democratic space in countries. And Lena herself gave many examples. And our neighbor Nepal is an excellent example. Andy's story of Indonesia is very clear what happened when parties were mandated with 30% at all tiers, as part of the party, part of candidates. And also the story from our speaker from Tibet administration, that as a result of the transformative democratic aspiration in society, a constitution was rewritten or freshly written or written with a totally fresh lens. And these constitutions like that of India are over 75 years have withstood the test of time in democratic spirit. But 1945, 1947, 1950 was not the time and space that 2000, 2005, 2010 is all about. And therefore, whatever changes have happened in our constitution in India and other countries, they have been mostly incremental. They have been more accommodative than transformative. And therefore, we must understand this, that in fact, I have made this point in relation to the voice and representation of civil society. Almost all constitutions written in the last 25 years have explicitly mentioned civil society inside the constitution. But those constitutions which were prepared at the turn of post-World War II, they talk about people and people and people, but nothing substantive about civil society. And I think this is an important recognition whenever we debate constitutional mandate. The second link to this, and this has been very well articulated by Bhim Bhau also, Of course, Ritu ने तो जबरदस्त बात कह दी, एकदम मजा आ गया कि we cannot look at women's political leadership from only a women's lens or a women's empowerment lens. It is a democratic parity, democratic mandate, and democratic requirement that their representation is a part of representation of all segments of society. And as we heard from many of you, certain, in India, for example, caste-based process has moved forward. In some countries, in Malaysia and all, religion-based mandates have moved forward because it is seen as part of democratic. And I think we who champion women's empowerment, women's political leadership, gender equality, just as we say gender equality is not a women's agenda, it's societal agenda, it is democratic agenda, we need to begin our campaign for women's political leadership as a democratic agenda, as a mandate, as Bhimbao said, also for men and also for all those responsible for creating and enabling political representation of all sections of society. But it is important to also realize that there are other institutions in each country. And I have been quite concerned about representation of women and women's leadership in many other institutions of Indian society. Let me give you some example. A recent study showed that out of 810 universities and scientific research institutions in India, less than 7% are headed by women. Less than 7%, even lower than representation. Then you come to judges, all High Court and Supreme Court judges taken together, not to talk about district court, Supreme Court judges, and that is less than 12%. Recently, our Chief Justice of Supreme Court talked about 50% reservation in judiciary. First time somebody even spoke about that, let alone do something about it. And then in corporate boards, in company boards, less than 15%. This is despite the fact that in 2013 Company Act amendment, a requirement of a mandated at least one woman on the board, at least one. Even then, the representation of women. So all these major institutions, the academia, the knowledge institutions, the judiciary, the business institutions, if all of them are demonstrating the same cultural phenomenon, it is not that, there are really 48% women teachers and academicians and researchers in the country. How come only 7% reach the top? How come? So this is a universal question for all our institutions, and therefore, I would like to suggest that the strategy going forward, with people like Ranjana leading away from one side, we need to find champions within judiciary, within the legal community. We want to find champions within academia and research community and business community. And many people are concerned about this. We are not the only ones. If we coalesce in terms of leadership, equitable, demonstrable, parity in leadership of all institutions of society, then political institutions are included. I don't think we should worry which comes first, but if we coalesce around this, we will have a broader coalition to work together and to address this question, because there are people who are working in those other segments also. And I think the final point I want to make is what our speaker from Indonesia so rightly said: never give up. Never give up. The fact that this issue is being debated in 2021 and was not debated or even discussed in 1999 is a it's a demonstration of the changed reality. And I hope that we get a younger generation of women leaders of all institutions who have grown up in slightly more equitable, egalitarian socialization process. And they take the cudgels going forward. Because the glass ceiling is everywhere. And the only way to shatter it, break it, is to push your thumbs and fists up and do it with strength. So never give up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. With that, we come to the end of our Samvad for this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for giving us your time, sharing with us your stories, your personal stories and your emotions. Thank you, trusting us with them. Thank you so much for that. There will be a recording of this available. We will be also sharing it with all of you, for your record and for you for dissemination. Thank you so much. Thank you.